As of right now, August of 2018, it will almost be 1 year since Xenoblade 2 has been released. Considering the DLC is soon going to be released, I thought it would be interesting to come back to this game. Anyways, before I go on, I would like to say that this video contains spoilers of both Xenoblade Chronicles 1 on the Wii and this game as well, especially regarding their endings. You have been warned. So, to cut straight to the chase, I suppose you already understood that I'm going to talk about that revelation that happened in Xenoblade 2, that both the first game and this one turned out to be connected. Now, here is the thing. Why were most people surprised? I've already seen people tell me, but look, they are named Xenoblade and Xenoblade 2. Obviously they are sequels. Well, yeah. To be honest, at first you can't really argue against that. After all, it's one of the most logical things on the planet. Heck, even the Star Wars movies started out with 4, 5 and 6. I made more sense in that perspective. We just have to go back a bit. Back when Xenoblade Chronicles X was still an anticipated game yet to be released. At the time, many people theorized about how it connected with the original Xenoblade game. As trailers went on, people thought they found more and more evidence of those connections. But as it turns out, Monolith Soft came out and said that they were in separate universes, which disappointed many people, myself included, at the time at least. But hey, that game came out, I really liked it, and that's what counts, I suppose. So, to go back to the case of Xenoblade 2, we obviously were fairly excited when that first trailer came out, and of course, its continuity was one of the first things we asked ourselves about. And Monolith Soft were really quick in saying that the only connection between those two games were focused on storyline and characters, unlike Xenoblade Chronicles X. You guys at Monolith Soft really are a bunch of jokers, aren't ya? Due to that, when we finally get that revelation, well, saying that it was surprising is an understatement. They take place at the same time, but in parallel universes. I suppose I do not need to explain why this isn't traditional. After all, usually storytelling is two ways, either with sequels being forward or prequels being backwards. It makes me question, is there a different way to define a sequel? Of course, we establish it tends to be linked by plot. But when looking at a game like Xenoblade 2, I would argue that another word we could use when talking about sequels is themes. An example could be the fear of losing home and what we love. However, interestingly, they present this theme through different lenses. For example, the first Xenoblade literally shows Colony 9 being raided by the Mechons, as well as, quote-unquote, killing Fiora in front of Shulk's own eyes, which provides motivation for him to go out and take his revenge. In Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it is presented in a more subtle manner, through the idea that all the titans eventually sink below the Cloud Sea, thus leading to less and less territory in the world. This is all accompanied by Pyra's relationship with Rex, and both of those factors provide motivation for him to go and fight Elysium. There are more examples I could provide, but I think you got the point. They don't necessarily tackle them in the same way, but both games actually have very similar themes. However, even with the similar plot points, the game keeps its own original story, independent from the first one, even with Klaus present. Frankly, you don't need to rely on the first Xenoblade to understand this game. It invites you to play it, fairly, but it isn't necessary per se. In that sense, I believe that Xenoblade 2 could be considered a self-contained sequel. It keeps similar themes, which are like a foundation for those games. The way those games build through their foundations is what makes them different, but at the end of the day, they keep similar roots. While not all games succeeded in doing something like that, Xenoblade is far from being the first franchise to try that. Take for example the Zelda series, with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I know, it sounds like a weird example, considering people usually tend to say it is a very different Zelda game, because it is dark and creepy and depressing. But even that considered, I believe this idea of the foundational themes still is present. In this case, it is the idea of growing up and becoming an adult. What is interesting in their case is really how very differently those two games tackle the same thing. In the case of Ocarina of Time, Link starts by waking up in his bright and cheerful village in the forest, exploring caves, seeing lively markets, meeting incredible characters. However, As he is thrown 7 years into the future, into the body of an adult, he is faced with a dead town and incredible dangers ahead. It is epic. Even with those dark elements, it is the classic story of a hero who comes and saves the day after facing up against terrible enemies. And then comes Majora's Mask, where this theme is tackled not by Link physically becoming an adult, but by dealing with things that, simply put, aren't intended for his age. Heck, you could even consider the whole time management aspect of the game is part of this. But even with those similarities, both games contain their own story and their own world, even if it is the same Link that is incarnated in both entries, and both of course being very unique entries in the Zelda franchise as a whole. Even with that considered, Majora's Mask is a self-contained sequel to Ocarina of Time, which does not rely on this game in order to be played. So, to come back to Xenoblade 2, it is fair to say that it is not a proper sequel, at least not in the traditional sense of the term. However, through its use of themes, and then of course of its plot twist, it allowed the game's plot and world to become engaging, not just for those who already played the original game, but also for those who started with this one. Due to this, if we ever get to it, I wonder how Xenoblade Chronicles 3 will be tackled, if it follows a similar formula by building on the foundational themes on a different manner, and how would it connect with the other Xenoblade games. That is most definitely a good thing to wonder about. And with that statement, I will close this video. What do you guys think the next Xenoblade will be like? If you made it this far, then thank you very much for tuning in, and bye!